goodness gracious, Scorekeepers. Welcome back to the Score. It is our fantastic, wonderful podcast all about classical music and opera and pop culture, all from the perspective of three Black queer arts administrators. As always, I am your host, Rocky Jones, and I'm here with my two amazing, fabulous co-hosts. First, the incredible Paige Reynolds. Hello, Paige.
Hola.
How are you doing
¿Cómo
today?
estás?
Are you enjoying this cold, snowy weather?
Well, I'm about to enjoy it better because I got new snow tires. Holler.
Oh, look at you. Good for you. Yeah, I went to the gym yesterday and then came back and there were still 4 inches of snow on the ground to shovel, and I wanted to murder someone. I was not happy. But of course, what would we do without live from New York?
It's Friday morning.
The incredible Dr. Lee Bynum. Hello, Dr. Lee Bynum, and happy Aquarius season.
Thank you. I'm so glad that someone acknowledged that we were finally back in my house, in my time, around my people, where things are about to get a little weird. So good morning to all the queerdos out there. Glad to be joining you.
And we should say that this is Lee's first recording from your new place, so we're still kind of testing out the sound. So if there's
echo.
if there's some echoes or some street noise, please bear with us. But how is your first few days back in your old stomping grounds?
You know, I just have to say that I am so happy to be home. Had a great time while we were in Minnesota, but as you and Paige were just talking about snow tires and 4 inches of this and that, I was just sitting here thinking, oh, I am so glad to be where I am, where it is a balmy 41 degrees outside. And if I wanted to go outside, I could go in sneakers because there is no snow on the ground. So,
Wow.
yeah, I hadn't realized how much I missed New York until I was actually back on New York ground with my own keys to my own apartment. It wasn't like a hotel situation. It was like, oh yeah, I live here again. And it's, you know, it was kind of funny because we had this recent guest on who was talking about conducting at the Richmond Symphony. And while Richmond is the city of my birth and I lived right outside it for 18 years, it doesn't feel like home to me. It might have something to do with all those Confederate war monuments they love to pepper around the city. Maybe that did it.
Or the whole avenue, Monument Avenue, in the middle of the city.
I mean, look, where they could name something Confederate anything, they would name it Confederate anything. And I'm glad they've taken down a couple of those statues, but I'll bet there are all kinds of high schools and middle schools and neighborhoods with all kinds of wild names still politely affixed to the signs because everybody in Virginia is so polite. But it's actually New York and Hong Kong where I feel much more at home. I don't know if it's the, you know, slightly abrasive tones or the, you know, gently bad attitudes you see all over the place, but those are the cities where I feel like I belong, and I'm glad to be back at a place where I got yelled at a Starbucks a couple of days ago, but it was my fault for asking for something. So I was like, I'm home. I'm getting yelled at by teenagers again.
Yay. I can't remember if I've talked about this on the show before. I might have, but I always felt like my favorite thing about living in New York was like being able to just like walk down the street and like think out loud and just like talk to yourself, because like there's a dude over there on the corner, like talking to the trash can. Why can't I just talk to myself? And I find that here in Minnesota, people tend to look at you like you're like something is terribly wrong.
It's funny. My housemate was talking about this. She also lived in New York for a while, doing professional Afro-Cuban dance. And she talked about how, when you're in a African traditional religion, there are certain things you do that are public or that are outside, or certain places that you're supposed to go, or prayers that you're supposed to say publicly, like maybe at a crossroads or something like that. And she just commented how it was so nice because you could do all of those things and nobody would think anything of it. Why are you mumbling, holding a chicken at a crossroads? Nobody knows and they don't care.
It's just Tuesday. It's all good.
Or everybody knows and they don't care. Like, that's the other really lovely thing about it. It's like, I feel like I've been recontextualized, right? Where like aspects of my culture are no longer peculiarities. They're completely recognizable as being what they are and unbothersome to people because of it, right? It's like, oh, I've met a person of African or Caribbean descent before, so I know what you're doing. I know why you're wearing that. I know what you're saying. I know what your accent is. I know what food you like to eat, and I'm going to put the appropriate level of spice in it. Any number of wild things are going to start happening to me again, and I can't wait.
Living vicariously.
Oh my goodness gracious. I can smell it through the screen.
Yep. I'll just be over here being stared at for wearing all white.
Well, at least maybe you can camouflage during this part of the year, at least.
I wish it worked that way.
Yeah.
No, I just have to come visit Lee. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, as we descend upon your apartment.
Well, at least there will be something to absorb some of this sound. I can't wait till our stuff gets here, because living in an apartment, so basically we moved cross country and the movers are bringing our furniture, and it's going to take about 5 days. So we have a couple of days here where we have just the new furniture and like not other things that we're accustomed to, like, chairs or a bed. So it's been a very interesting couple of days here where all of the excitement is sort of centered around a dining table that has no chairs, but that is the furniture that is here. So
well, hopefully, and I pray for your back. Yeah,
seriously.
But I hope all of that, the movers are on time and nothing gets broken. Good Lord.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. All of that.
But speaking of New York, a couple of weeks ago, there's a very, very exciting bit of news from the New York Times that we haven't talked about yet, and that is that the Metropolitan Opera on the campus where you now work, Lee, is going to tap their endowment to the tune of $30 million to stage more operas by living composers, which who, by the grace of God, have been outselling the classics this past year. So, titles like Fire Shut Up in My Bones and The Hours have seen a huge spike in popularity, whereas some of the older operas that have been staged 10 trillion times have not. So go figure. Isn't that exciting?
One of the things that drew me to Minnesota Opera was the fact that it had this reputation for developing new works. And it was really one of my favorite things about working there. I like the classics in opera as much as anybody else who likes the classics in opera, but I'm especially interested in newer work, right? What new stories we can tell and what new creators we can give opportunities to tell these stories. So seeing this and this acknowledgement that these works do sell. People are very interested in hearing it. There are aficionados as well as new audience members who are very curious about what this is going to look like. I love that acknowledgement. And then secondly, I also just like the fact that we are really sitting in this conversation about if the art form is to continue, and we all want it to, that we have to do different things. We can't continue to produce in the ways that we always have, and then assume that one, the audience that we've established for ourselves is going to live forever, and that B, that new people don't need to be engaged, and this engagement takes a long time, and we have to cultivate it and be consistent and be thoughtful. And people do care about new stories being told in new ways, thinking differently about musical forms and how the voice is utilized and what instruments are being written into the score. I think all of this is really important. So I just love that the Met is moving in that direction, and that they will be doing X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X by the great Anthony Davis next season. I will be there with bells on, probably twice, once so I can just listen and experience, and then the second time so I can listen and think about it and talk about it with my friends. So I'm super excited about this change. Super, super excited.
So exciting. And again, I looked at it and I said, oh, okay, so that's when I'm going to be visiting Lee. Okay. Yeah, and just makes all the sense in the world.
Go figure, right?
Everything. Given everything, it just makes all the sense. Like what the world has collectively gone through. Of course, we don't want to see the same things, given what people have been saying about the natural progression of people who, are older, white, maybe only prefer your typical A operas, or the stuff that is most strictly classical. Those folks are frankly dying. Like, that's just the natural life cycle. Yeah. So it just it makes sense, and I hope we see other people like following their lead and learn from also the data. I love some good data that backs up what we've been saying. Like, it'd be cool if people listen the first time, but like also like having some data, or a case study, being able to say, see, I like that.
And as an artist, I'm so excited for the artists. Like, it is just so cool, because I mean, I know, like, so many singers, like, there's one role that's kind of their bread and butter. But I would just think it's just, and they talk to a number of artists in this article, but that is just so freeing, and you get to like not sing like Mimi in La Boheme for like the 30th time. Like, you actually get to like get up there and like just dive into something new and sink your teeth into it and create something from scratch. I mean, as an artist, that's the type of thing that I get really excited about. Like, sure, yeah, great. Like, I when I used to perform, like getting up and, doing, the song that people like, for the 50th time, cool, great, fantastic. I'm glad you enjoy it. Thank you so much. But being able to do something new and fresh and bring like the work of these, living composers that you can actually like go up to and speak to and be like, what do you think about this? Or what if we tried this, or whatever? Like, I don't know, that I just think that's so exciting.
I do too. And it sounds like the way that you keep art forms healthy, right? And this is not this idea of, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, which I maintain is just the worst analogy ever. We really need to think of a new thing. But but we can do two things at the same time, right? We can keep the things that are important to us, that still reflect our values, that we still feel like we're proud of. We can recontextualize or have a conversation about the things that are problematic or no longer comport with how we see ourselves as a society. And then we can certainly embrace and cultivate new work created by people who are actively interested in seeing the art form continue. And I mean, I think that is a healthy way to approach it. And I think some of our healthiest artistic disciplines, like film and TV, which we don't always talk about as the artistic disciplines that they are, but they are truly, these very important ways that we capture narrative right now. They are figuring out how to do that, how to stay current with audiences, how to use technology to their benefit, how to sort of make a bigger umbrella for folks to be able to experience the thing. And I think more of us on the performing arts side have to be able to understand how we integrate those ideas and those methods into what we're doing. That's what I think, anyway.
Well, I think that that's very smart.
Why, thank you.
As usual. Well, since it seems that today's theme is New York, why don't we keep the party going? And today we will be visited by the incredible host of the Harlem Connection, Adé Williams. And we had a super fun conversation with him about all sorts of things, about Harlem, about comic books, about the Apollo. And I don't know, I had a whole lot of fun, so I hope you all will too. And so we will be right back with Adé.
Welcome back, Scorekeepers. Did you miss us on our little break? No worries. We are back with a amazing guest that I'm really excited about. This is going to be fun. We are talking to Adé Williams, the conceiver, executive producer, and one of the musical conductors of the Harlem Connection weekly radio show that provides you the artists and the sounds that helped establish Harlem as a cultural mecca. Adé has also served as the Apollo Theater's Community Programs Director, the Harlem Week Festival's Executive Director, a DC Comics editor, and a writer for publications including the New York Amsterdam News and the New York Daily News. We are so excited. Welcome, Adé. Yay!
Welcome!
Thank you. Okay, if I'm facing the camera, which way should I? Where's the camera? No camera? Wait, hold on. This is my opera debut. I'm wearing a tuxedo.
Oh my goodness.
I got the helmet with the horns and everything.
Oh my goodness.
You can see me? What kind of podcast is this? All right, I'll roll with it anyway. I'm ready.
I bet you sharp. I bet you're sharp. I wish we could see you, but I just know you are. I can hear it. Well, thank you for joining us, Adé. I'm so excited. And I think first, I was excited to talk about your show, to talk about Harlem. And then I thought about, we have listeners in India, And
As do we.
Yeah. And so I wonder if you could introduce a little bit about Harlem Connection, but talk about the show and why Harlem, your connection to Harlem, and its significance. What are you exploring on the show?
Well, wow, a lot in that question. How do I break that down? I'll go with my connection to Harlem is my family moved here in 19 And I was really fortunate because my great grandmother and great grandfather were the ones who moved here. But luckily for me, my great grandmother lived to be over 100 years old.
Oh,
And
wow.
so,
Wow.
and so I got to hear all of these stories about Harlem during the Roaring '20s, during the Harlem Renaissance, during the Great Depression, during the Civil Rights Movement, from somebody who had lived it firsthand as opposed to like reading about it in a book. And that is one of the many reasons I got to appreciate how special this community is. In terms of, you said you have listeners over in India. I'm proud to say that we do too. In fact, one of them gives me feedback regularly. So thank you so much for the feedback I get from Saoirse. I think kind of the point of our show, right? So what we do with the Harlem Connection is we play music from every genre and every era. Like we will play stuff from the 40s to 2023, from all kinds of genres, with one thing, which is everybody we play somehow has to connect to Harlem. And we define a Harlem connection as the artist or someone related to the song we're playing has to have either lived in Harlem, gone to school in Harlem, worked in Harlem, or performed in Harlem. And that can be the singer or the songwriter or the producer or one of the musicians in the band or what have you, but there has to be some kind of Harlem connection. So we play the music and then we explain, hey, here's how this connects to Harlem. Well, hopefully the show works for two reasons. One is because of Harlem's rich history and culture and diversity, and the fact that, yes, Harlem is a physical location, but it is symbolic of Black America, of Hispanic America, what have you. So that's part of why I like to believe the show works. But the other thing, and the important thing, is the point of the show is really how we're all connected. And so some of the greatest artists from all over the globe have intentionally come to perform in Harlem. Some of the greatest creators have come to Harlem. And so there is a connection, whether you're from India or South America or South Africa or London or Japan or what have you, where if you keep listening, you're going to go, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know that fill in the blank had a Harlem connection. Or maybe you do and you're very proud of it, because this has always been a ridiculously diverse community. And so, people talk about gentrification these days and that kind of thing. But I remember my great grandmother telling me about, oh yeah, and over here, like that used to be an Irish neighborhood. Oh, really, great grandma? Like, yeah, the Irish were over here, and then over in these blocks, like that was the Italian section and what have you. And some of those enclaves still live. And so what we try to do with this show, I tell you, it's a Harlem themed radio show. You're going to hear hip hop. You're going to hear James Brown, right? But then we throw in music by the Gershwins, right? Then we throw in music by Bob Dylan. And you're like, wait, what? It's like, right, because they lived in Harlem, right? And so part of the show, part of the premise of the show is, and I think, frankly, what I think we have in common with the score is sometimes you kind of try to put people in a certain box and you try to just, oh, this is how I see you, and therefore this is how you're limited. Whoa, 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 whoa. Like, no, that's your limitation. But we're actually far deeper, far more diverse than you may think. And so whether that is a community or a podcast or a radio show or what have you, it's about expanding the boundaries. So that's my answer to at least a couple of your questions.
Thank you so much.
Well, so that gets me thinking. So, my family has a lot of connections to New York as well. Most of my family lived in Brooklyn, but we do have a number of Harlem connections as well. And I lived in New York on the Upper West Side, Morningside Heights and Washington Heights specifically, but I spent a lot of time in Harlem. And the thing about walking around in Harlem in that community is, you know, you are just sort of inundated with all sorts of sights and sounds and smells and all sorts of music happening, like you mentioned earlier, you know, hip hop and jazz and R&B, but you know, also like salsa and merengue and all of those sounds as well that you think about. And there's so many, you know, when you think about the art of Harlem, there are so many things that are just, you know, synonymous, you know, the Harlem Renaissance and hip hop and all of that stuff. But I'm just curious, like, and as you've been doing this show now, have there been any Harlem connections that you have found to be really surprising? Like, oh, wow, I had no idea that this person had a Harlem connection or that person had a Harlem connection that, you know, you really got excited about sharing.
Oh, it happens all the time. The ones that you didn't know did, and the ones that you think did, and you're like, wait, I cannot find one. So I guess yeah, so there's an answer, there's kind of two answers to your question. So I do the show in conjunction with a number of people. So my regular co-conductors are DJ Black Icon 1 and Mama Soul. And I think part of what works about the show is we all have eclectic tastes, but where my weakness might be someone else's strength. So like one of our very first, and there's a sense of independence about it. So I do my block, and then Mama Soul does her block, DJ Black Icon 1 does his block. And as long as they're within the theme, it works. So one of the surprises for me was DJ Black Icon 1 played Fiona Apple. And I was like, wait, what? And yeah, so Rocky, you mentioned Morningside Heights, but so Harlem is called Harlem, but there are different sections of Harlem. So there's El Barrio, East Harlem, right? There's Central Harlem, and Morningside Heights is a part of Harlem. And frankly used to advertise itself as Harlem until the image of Harlem started changing, and then real estate agents started playing up the name Morningside Heights more so. But yeah, Fiona Apple is from that area. So that was a surprise to me. There are a lot of others that aren't necessarily surprises to me per se, but might be surprises to the audience, whether it's Metallica or Harry Houdini or Al Pacino. You know, there are other like little surprises, like, you know, you think of a great artist like Tito Puente, who was a proud Puerto Rican, but was actually born in Harlem, right? As was Harry Belafonte, who was born in Harlem. So, so there's always different ways of coming at it. So what we do with this show is the Harlem connection is always the foundation, right? But just like with your podcast, we want to have people coming back every week. So every week we come at it with a different theme. And so the theme kind of shapes what we do. So for example, we do an annual show called it's around Valentine's Day, and we do a journey called the Harlem Love Disconnection, because I realized once that and this happens all the time. Like, you know, I was speaking to this young lady once, and she was talking about her upcoming wedding plans, and she's like, yeah, and I'm going to walk down the aisle to she was either, no, her first dance was going to be Before I Let Go by Frankie Beverly and Maze. And I was like, it's a great song, but that song is about breaking up, you know. And she's like, wait, what? No, it's not. I'm like, well, if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, before I let you go. Like, it's about breaking up, right?
I mean, it's in the title.
It's right, but and I'm not trying to clown her. Like, a lot of times we're listening to the music and not necessarily paying attention to the lyrics. So every year, as a public service announcement, right around Valentine's Day, we do a journey called the Harlem Love Disconnection. All songs that we highly recommend you do not dedicate to your significant other for Valentine's Day weekend. Like, if you like the song, cool, but do not dedicate this during Valentine's Day weekend, because if your significant other pays attention to the lyrics, you're going to have a problem, right? So we'll come up with a theme like that, and then we'll start like kind of brainstorming, like, okay, what songs I want to play, right? And then we'll think, okay, well, I'm thinking of this song, who does this song? And now the research begins. So some of them we'll know instantly because I saw so-and-so perform at the Apollo, and Black Icon One saw so-and-so perform at such and such place. And Mama Soul she is, I'm sure there's a better term for this, but she's our party girl. Like, Mama Soul is the person who, like, literally, no lie, like, I was at a concert where I saw Mama Soul, and before the concert was over, she was leaving, and I was like, well, wait, they're gonna come back for an encore. She's like, yeah, I know, but I got tickets for this other show. And she was like, she literally was going from like doing like multiple concerts in one night. So we all come with different kind of so we'll all kind of brainstorm and go, okay, well, I'm gonna play this song by this person, and I know they have a Harlem connection because I saw them, but I also want to play this song. And then we start doing research to be like, okay, can we justify playing this song? And if so, what tidbit of information can we give to the audience? And that's kind of how we put the whole thing together.
You know, I think anybody who's spent any amount of time in Harlem can understand why it's more than a place, how it manages to be an attitude, a state of mind, a sort of a way of thinking about your place in the world. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of the show? How did you get the idea to create it, and then how you went about sort of setting the whole thing up?
Lee, thanks for the question. So there's kind of two answers, right? The first real genesis is from my youth, right? Listening to radio and being with my family, my dad, my mom, what have you. The second genesis goes back to what Rocky said about walking around Harlem. And putting those two things together, realizing that I had the opportunity of a show idea that just kind of marinated in my head. And then the third thing was how it came to fruition, which was the pandemic. So let me try to marry all three. So when I was coming up, I'm in my early 50s here. And so what I'm about to explain, like, a lot of people are not going to quite get this, but when I was coming up, like, there was the main Black radio station in New York City, right? And we listened to radio. So if we were in the car, then because there was like one station and they had to kind of cater to everyone, they would be playing the Temptations or Smokey Robinson, right? And my father would be singing along and what have you. And then they would play Prince, who at the time was a relatively new artist, and I would be singing along, and my father would be like, "Oh, who's this?" I'm like, "Oh, Daddy, that's Prince, right?" So it had to be multi-genre and multi-generational because it had to service all of us. And as a result, my father learned about my music and my generation, and I learned about his, right? Nowadays, you don't have that experience. Not only are the stations segmented, this one only plays hip hop and R&B, this one only plays classical, this one only plays that. But even if you're all in the car together, like, folks are listening to stuff on their headphones as opposed to having a shared experience. And I felt like radio is missing a lot because it's not finding ways to bring us together and connecting us, ergo the name, the Harlem Connection. So that was part of it. The other thing is what Rocky mentioned earlier. You grow up in an area and it just is what it is. And you just kind of often take it for granted, right? Like, you grow up in an area where there's 14 inches of snow, and you're like, oh yeah, it snows, right? Well, that's foreign to me, but you guys might be used to it, right?
I'm getting PTSD.
Well, in Harlem, as Rocky said, if you walk around Harlem for 25 minutes, you're going to hear multiple genres of music coming from people's cars, coming from their windows of their apartments, in a bodega, what have you. And it's so rich and diverse. And in my mind, I thought, okay, well, that's just how it is, until I started visiting other places and would be like, wow, everywhere I go, they only play country western music everywhere I go. Like, well, yeah, that's because you're in this part of the country and or this city or this town, and that's what they do here, period, point blank. And so I started realizing that there was something unique about Harlem and New York City and other areas where there's more of a diverse melting pot. Um, and so those kind of things made me think, hey, kind of wish we had a show or a radio show that kind of brought people together, that wasn't just one thing. Um, so that's what gave me the idea of the show. But what really kicked it into gear for the most part was the pandemic. Um, Harlem was really going through it during the time. The Apollo Theater and all the theaters were closed. Like most places were closed, other than some restaurants, here and there, what have you. And a lot of what makes Harlem Harlem is the culture, the arts, and those venues were closed. And so we wanted to champion that. We wanted to have a show that reminded people like how special a community this is, and these amazing venues and these amazing artists. And so that when things reopened, people were eager to return to them. And or during the times when they were closed, maybe people would go online to see some of the Apollo or Harlem stages, or the Schomburg's online programming. So that was our way of trying to kind of do our part to promote the community, promote this big venues, promote the small venues, and also promote the independent artists during a time where people could not see them live. And then we've just continued to do so.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned the Apollo in there. And I think watching your recent interview, you said you worked there for 15 years.
Yes.
And Apollo is just legendary, iconic, of course. And I wonder if you could just, tell us what that's been like, and what have been, the most significant, takeaways and moments from that experience. It's not every day that we get to talk to somebody who worked at the legendary Apollo.
And
Thank you.
Did you ever get to meet Kiki Shepard?
Rocky with the important
Oh,
question.
I did not, actually. I did not. Again, with my family having been in Harlem since before the Apollo actually was the Apollo, it's had a lifelong connection to us. And so, you know, literally, like my great grandmother, my grandparent, everybody went to the Apollo. My father was on the board of directors for a period. I was going there since the time I was a little kid. And uh and I also remember there a period where the Apollo was closed, and how the things that were hard in Harlem during that period of economic plight, and how they and the pride that came back when the Apollo reopened. So I always want to thank the Honorable Percy Ellis Sutton and the Sutton family for their investment in reopening the Apollo during a time where people frankly thought they were crazy and it would never work. Um, I know that when I was a kid during a certain period, and when Harlem was going through rough times, there was almost like a little stigma from being from Harlem. And then I remember when the Apollo reopened, and then there was the TV show Showtime at the Apollo, and how quickly things changed from like, oh, you're from Harlem, to, oh, you're from Harlem. Have you ever been to the Apollo? And like suddenly, like people thinking it was cool, and realizing that what a difference that arts and culture and a venue that showcase us at our best could make. So that's kind of the main thing that stands out to me, but I'm not sure I answered your question.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the other thing that is what I got to realize was that not all venues were equal, right? Um, I was fortunate enough to get to see other performers perform at other places, whether they were elsewhere in New York City or other states. And you know what? I'll just say, I know I saw Ray Charles perform once in Massachusetts, right? Amherst, Massachusetts. And he was Ray Charles. So of course it was a great show, right? He was terrific, right? But then a little while later, like a year or two later, I saw him at the Apollo, and the energy and the joy and the effort and everything that he put into that show, it was a completely different. I mean, it was still Ray Charles, but it was like Ray Charles at his A game. It was just a whole nother Ray Charles.
Wow.
And I got to see that over and over and over and over again. What's
Ooh.
interesting about the Apollo is when people who've never been there walk into that theater, they're like, oh, it's a lot smaller than I thought it'd be. The Apollo holds like 1,500, right? It's like my high school auditorium almost, right? And I'm being like literal. But despite that, you will have these artists who can sell out arenas that can literally fit like 100 times that many people. But when they come to the Apollo, most of them come like as though like it's like their big break. It's like I saw you at Madison Square Garden last year, like, but you're at the Apollo and you are, and I've seen people backstage like A-listers who would be nervous, like they were amateur night amateurs, where you're like, yeah, but you're so and so. They're like, yeah, but this is the Apollo. I mean, you can't half step at the Apollo. And I will let you know that the Apollo audience, for the most part, is consistent. The same way they will let an amateur have it and boo an amateur if they're not coming correct, they will boo an A-lister too. Like they're like, you do not phone it in at the Apollo Theater, because they're like, listen. Last week we saw Beyonce. Week before we saw Bruno Mars. Like, you better bring it. Like, we not like don't come here with no laziness. And so that's one of the great things about there is a real energy that the audience brings, that the artists, whether they are performers or panelists or MCs or DJs or dancers, like whatever they are, they come at it with a certain kind of energy. I even got to see some operas at the Apollo. Yeah, because I know this is produced by Aqua. So yeah,
we all chuckle.
Yeah, so there was a opera called Yardbird about Charlie Parker.
And
then they had another one that was called We Shall Not Be Moved, which was both in conjunction with Opera Philadelphia. And I like that it kind of shows the diversity of our community. It's one of the things I love about here.
That's beautiful. And it's also just so Black for an audience to have like a dialogue like that. Like for it to, I that's the kind of thing I can only, at least in my life, that I mostly see happening in very Black spaces, that you have that call and response, that conversation. Like there's a presentational aspect, but it's give and receive. The audience has to feel it if you're gonna keep going. And it also just, it warms my heart that we put on our best for each other like that in that space.
Absolutely.
Like, I just love that. I just love that we know that among us is where we have to actually show out the most, not for other folks. Like,
You said it. Yeah. When you come, it doesn't matter if they love you everywhere else, and then you come home and folks is like,
Right.
"You's all right." Like nobody wants that.
Shoot, you get dissed for that if you black. Like, what you do? You out here, acting like your big stuff, but no one
Oh,
knows you back home. No one likes you
word.
back home. They don't claim
Right.
you back home.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you a story about that off air. I got a great story about that off air. Okay.
Well, another part of your fabulous career is your work as an editor at DC Comics. And I think my older sister would never forgive me if I didn't ask you any questions about that, because I think other than our very own Dr. Lee Bynum, I do not know a bigger comic book nerd on earth.
Actually, that's the whole reason I'm on your podcast now is because Lee and I met on a comic book panel about the Black Panther at Columbia University.
Really?
We're on this panel, and everyone's and every time Lee said something, I was like, "Oh, right, he knows his stuff." And after the panel, like we connected, and it's been a love fest ever since. So yeah, hit me with a comic question. Well, I'm sure people are like, what the hell do comic books have to do with a radio show and Harlem? But
we contain multitudes.
Yeah. They know that we're nerds by now. Our audience knows we're nerds. So
yeah. Oh no, for sure. It's one of the things I like about the podcast.
Well, I saw an interview with you, and you were talking about a thesis that you wrote in college. And how that led to your job at DC Comics. And so I'm just so curious about, I just wanted I don't have a specific question in mind, because I just want to know as much as I can about this thesis that you wrote about the history of Black characters in comic books, and how that, led to the work that you did.
Okay, so that is a long multi-year answer.
Question.
I would try really, really hard to make it as concise as possible. So this is how they all connect. So I said I saw Ray Charles in Amherst, Massachusetts. That's because I was a college student at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst at the time. I was an Afro-Am major, and I had to do a senior thesis on something African-American history related. And I could not think of anything that might be of any interest to the professors. And so eventually I came up with the idea of doing a thesis on the history of Black characters as superhero comics and what they reflected about their time. And the whole kind of premise was that comics are art, and art reflects the times. And so it is not coincidental that when they introduce Sam Wilson as the Falcon in Marvel Comics, that he's dressed and he looks a little like Sidney Poitier, right? That he's got like Martin Luther King Jr. mannerisms. And it's also not coincidental that when he has to fight other Black villains, that those villains tend to look like Black Panthers, meaning not the superheroes, but like they got dashikis and they've got afros or what have you, right? Comics always reflect the mores, the values of the time, and that's always been the case. And so we don't always catch it, but that's always the case. And so that was the basis of the thesis. And so I was a comic book lover. There's a lot of information that I walked in knowing, but there was a lot of research I had to do. And eventually, once I finished the thesis, I sent a copy to my cousin, who got me interested in comics when we were little kids. And so I sent him a note saying, "Thank you for helping me graduate from college," right? And then as fate would have it, my cousin is at a party and meets the president of DC Comics, right? And so he basically talks to her, talks me up. She's like, well, he can send me his resume. And my cousin's like, well, he's about to graduate. He doesn't have much experience. And she's like, well, when he gets more experience, he can send a resume. And my cousin luckily was like, well, he doesn't have a lot of experience, but he did this 100-page thesis. And she was like, well, haven't sent me the thesis. And
Hmm.
that, and luckily, that was enough to open the doors for me at DC Comics. When I got to DC Comics as an editor, your job basically is to kind of produce and create by putting the right artists together. So you find, hey, you're trying to write this, you're trying to have this kind of comic. Well, I like this writer because he has this kind of voice, and this penciler is a great match for this particular project. And then I got to have the colorist who's the right colorist for the right flavor for this particular, blah, blah, blah. So you're putting it all together. You're editing scripts and you're kind of doing this creative collaboration. And so I learned a lot of how to do that, and also how to market the comic, because the first comic I got was about to get canceled, and I had to learn, well, this is not really my job to market the comic, but I don't want to get canceled. And then they go, well, we gave the brother a chance, and of course his comic got canceled. See what happens, right? So I put in extra work. And so so that's how I started doing comics. And eventually, when it was time to look for another direction, at that particular time, my father was one of the creators of the Harlem Week Festival. So for those who are unaware, there's an annual festival in Harlem where it's vendors and food and concerts, but also conferences and panel discussions and sports and events for kids and senior citizens and you name it. And so, I was leaving DC Comics, I'm looking for the next job, and I'm like, well, Dad, since Harlem Week is coming up, let me kind of help you and help the board out and contribute some time with some of these new skill sets I've learned, before I go on and do my next thing. And and that ended up, instead of being a summer job, next thing I did was like 6.5 years later. My father is a very, very persuasive man. And so I learned how to do like event productions and that kind of thing during Harlem Week. And then that led to the Apollo Theater job. And then the Apollo Theater skills and what have you helped lead to me doing the radio show. So that's how they all connect. And your sister, like Lee, has really, really good taste, and I feel vindicated because I was a kid on the subway train, like reading comic books as like a teenager or a young adult, and folks would be like rolling their eyes, like he's not as big as he is, and he's still reading some comic books. And now, look, the whole world. You look at all the top movies and TV shows and what have you. Now everybody loving comic books. Like I knew where Wakanda was, but I was 4 years old. Y'all just getting up on it. I said
it. No, and she's set for life because she's got these books and books of all these X-Men #5 and whatnot sitting in her storage locker, and I'm just like, man.
Yeah, so make sure you're nice to her.
I always am.
But I think one of the things I want to kind of make sure folks hear is in a certain way, I think my experience is certainly, I guess, unique. But one of the things that was important for me to figure out, like I had a summer job once that I hated, and I knew like, okay, my folks ain't rich, so I'm gonna have to work. I don't want to spend my working time doing something that I hate. And eventually I learned like, well, all these things that I really love, whether it's comic books or concerts or productions or radio, what have you, like those are jobs. And so I really push people to try to like embrace their passions and see where they take you. When I was working on that thesis in college, I had no idea that was going to lead to a job. I just knew, well, I'm going to do my best work if it's something that I'm interested in, instead of just phoning it in and being like, oh, Martin Luther King marched in 1963. Like, let me like do something that I'm actually passionate about. And you never know where your passion is going to take you, but you want to make sure you're taking the opportunity to kind of hone it and get better at it. So you're not just like being a fan, but like being a bit of an expert and doing the extra work. So I really hope that that's the kind of takeaway that people get from that story. And I also hope the other takeaway is people go, man, I gotta listen to that Harlem Connection radio show. It sounds so good. So that's where I'm gonna ask for help from all you scorekeepers, right? Which is, I'm doing something kind of experimental. It's not, my radio show isn't a hip hop radio show. It's not an old school radio show. It's a little bit of everything. That has made it challenging, like at some places where they're like, well, we only play such and such, like our station only does such and such. But I really believe that there is an audience for people who love diversity. I really believe that there's an audience out there that's not just into a straight cookie cutter, like, hey, we only do this. So I hope that your scorekeepers will be scorekeepers, but they will also be Harlem Connection passengers. I hope they will get on board the Harlem Connection and enjoy the ride. So anyone who's interested in doing that, our Twitter handle is Harlem Connect FM. So that's Harlem Connect FM, and our Facebook and Instagram are the name of the show, The Harlem Connection. And we are on live on Friday nights, but if folks can't listen to us Friday nights, 10 o'clock on WBAI or rhythmandsoulradio.com, they can go to wbai.org/archive, and whatever we play for a 2-week period will be available for streaming on demand. And again, every single week we give different flavors and different themes, and we have a lot of fun. And I really hope folks will not only tune in, but spread the word through social media and other means, because I think we got something here.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you made some time to come on the show this morning and share some of your experience and some of what you're working on. And I think the scorekeepers will be very intrigued and entertained by what they will encounter on the Harlem Connection. So thank you again for being here this morning, Adé.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I answered all the questions and didn't blow it or forget anything. But if I did, then you'll just have to have me back. I'm ready next week.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. And everybody, all the scorekeepers, all that information is going to be in the show notes and all the links. So go check out the Harlem Connection. Thank you so much for being here. This was such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with Pure Black Joy. Woohoo! And we are back. We just want to thank Adé Williams once again for being with us.
Woo-hoo.
And now it is time for our favorite part of the show. Are you ready, Paige?
Ready, Freddy.
All right. And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly with a baseball bat. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly with a baseball bat. Peanut butter jelly. Peanut butter jelly. Hey.
Sorry. I feel like I always cut you off early. I apologize.
It's okay because I switch up the ending every time.
You really do.
It's just whatever I'm feeling. It really is.
Yes, and total what's the word that I'm looking for? Disclosure. We're recording 2 episodes today, so I'm excited to see what you do for the second one.
Because you said that, I'm gonna intentionally make it different.
Oh Lord. Okay, I'm gonna be on my toes. Yes, this is Pure Black Joy. This is where we talk all about the Black people, places, things, music, culture that is making us happy this week. So who would like to go first? Anyone?
I guess I could go first. I'm just
Okay.
sitting here, not doing anything else.
In your
Um,
cathedral.
in my cathedral. So my very favorite actress in the world, Miss Angela Bassett, is continuing
Yes.
her world domination tour, having won the Critics' Choice and the Golden Globe Awards for Best Supporting Actress for Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Super excited for her. Wish her luck at the SAG Awards and what I am assuming will be a Golden Oscar Award ceremony for
Mhm.
her next month. Just very, very happy about it. Absolutely love the movie. I thought, she was absolutely brilliant in it.
Mhm.
They knew exactly how to utilize her,
Yeah.
how to dress her. The costumes are ridiculous. Everybody looks so good. It's such a great year between Wakanda Forever and The Woman King for movies with large ensemble casts of Black actresses. Been very, very excited about that. And Abbott Elementary, which had a great showing at the TV versions of those award shows, also great ensemble cast, and big shouts to Cheryl Lee Ralph, a talented Jamaican actress, as we know, and Quinta and Tyler, better known to Black America as Everybody Hates Chris, and everybody else on the show for also all of these awards that they keep snatching. It's a great time to be watching TV or movies if you like fiction. It's just been wonderful, just absolutely wonderful.
And I just have to say, obviously, Angela Bassett could wear a potato sack and look like a queen, but that silver dress that she wore at the Golden
Yeah.
Globes and her hair, and the makeup and the
Yeah, all of
good
it,
God,
all of it. Yeah.
Everything.
it was
Even
such a
Wakanda
moment.
Forever. Even Wakanda Forever. Like I found myself any scene she was in, I was looking at her.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
she was a scene stealer. Like, there's just her. There's already her in just her presence. Like again, she could be wearing a potato sack in those scenes. I still would be looking at her. But then like the costume just added to it. Ugh.
Ugh.
Yeah. So deserved.
So deserved. And I just cannot wait to see her saunter up to that Oscar stage and collect her things.
Her period.
Yes.
Just like Beyonce better be getting her things at the Grammys on February 5th. That's all I know.
If they want to keep any credibility that they have.
Thank you.
Right.
I just had to add that. But back to Angela. But just so well deserved, just for such an amazing career.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody's got that resume. And it's just so rewarding to see it, and for a movie that I enjoyed as much as I did. I always want people to get their flowers, but it's really nice when they do for something that it feels like itself was like a monument to Black excellence. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Paige, what's making you happy this week?
Yes. You know what? I had one thing, but Lee, your comment about like this and Woman King and these things with strong Black female cast reminds me of something I heard about this series African Queens that Jada Pinkett Smith is, I think, producing.
Wait, what is
one
this?
of the yes. So it is I want to say maybe it's a thing that'll come out either like end of this year, or I think it was giving like end of this year or something like that. And it is about like real African queens, rulers. Yes. And so it looks like it's kind of like documentary, but also it's the kind that's giving you like actors reenacting the stories,
I
like
love this idea.
it looks like it is going to be beautiful and well done, and yeah, like it's going to be a series.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Right?
I need to Google
Right?
this.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you, Jada.
I'm so glad you
Okay.
brought up Woman King because I completely forgot that I had read about it this week. Hello, ADHD. But yeah, that made me excited. But my other pure black joy, that was my originally planned one, was this my partner Nadine is my pure black joy. Nadine is,
Yay!
yes. I mean, they're amazing all the time. But there's a couple things. One, their organization Birth Revolution is launching its first doula training cohort this summer of 2023. It was just
Woohoo.
announced. Yay! It's the only, for me, it's the only Black, queer, and trans led doula training that I know of. So just putting that out there.
Mhm.
That's something to put out
Also,
there.
That is something to
yeah.
put out there.
And if you know somebody who wants to be a doula, we're training Black and Indigenous queer and trans doulas for free.
Oh,
So there is that. Yeah,
For the free,
so
for the free 99.
for the free. And I'm just so proud of them because this doula training has like, okay, yeah, all the stuff about like birth that you need, but also all the social stuff that I felt like was so important and is not part of a lot of other trainings.
yeah.
So just shout out to them. And they're getting an award from the P Fund of Minnesota, a Moxie
Yes.
Award. Yay! For them and their individual doula work, their company Doula for All, for advancing LGBTQ equity in Minnesota, for doing amazing work as a birth worker. So I'm just so freaking proud of them. They're so
Aw.
smart and amazing and beautiful and like, wow. So yeah. Congrats to my partner Nadine,
That's
aka Doula for
Congratulations,
All.
amazing. That is so
Nadine.
awesome. Are there like links and stuff that we can point people to if they want to do the training and
Yes.
all that stuff?
Absolutely. I will
Okay.
tell you the link to sign up. Registration is open.
Fabulous. Well, we'll put all of that in the show notes and everybody go sign up right now.
Yes, right now.
And congratulations, Nadine. That's amazing.
Yay.
Yay. That's my baby.
Well, my pure black joy is that tomorrow the three of us are going to be getting on planes and we will be heading to Detroit, Paige's hometown.
Hey, what up, though?
To go be a part of Sphinx Connect, which is the big annual conference of the Sphinx organization, which is a social justice organization that's focused on increasing representation for Black and Latinx artists in classical music and recognizing their excellence. So I'm so excited to go and hear some good music, to meet some beautiful Black and brown faces, and maybe we're still kind of working it out, but to sort of be a part of things, maybe talk to some people, have some people on the show, and introduce you to some Black and brown folks that are doing some big things in the classical music space. So I'm super excited, and I've never been to Detroit, so I'm excited to see a new city also.
It's so wild to me you've
Yay.
never been to Detroit.
I've never been to Detroit.
Where you been?
Wow.
I don't know. Why am I like, I don't know. Is that weird?
Yes.
It is.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I mean, I think part of it is just that like Detroit is just so Black and cultural, and you real Black and cultural, so I would just think that you've been there.
Right. Same. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I guess that makes sense. But look, here's the thing. Before I moved here, I had a big chip on my shoulder about the East Coast. So
Okay, well.
I just kind of stayed in the mid-Atlantic.
I know that chip. I know it well. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you get to see the city now.
Yes.
and with
Better late than
us.
never.
Better late than
Right.
never. Exactly.
We're gonna
And
have a
so,
great
yeah,
time.
so yes, yes, we are. And
We're
Sphinx,
gonna
here we
get some really
come.
good food too. I don't know why you didn't
Mhm.
mention that because that's on the list.
Amazing
Yes.
food. I'm gonna show y'all where Aretha Franklin got her furs. I'm
Hey.
gonna
Beautiful gals, beautiful gals. Well, it's gonna be a time. We're gonna have a time. And of course we're gonna tell all of you all about it. Can't wait for that. So stay tuned. But I think that's gonna do it for this week. All of the things. What are all of the things? Subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I haven't checked it in a while. We should see if there are some reviews.
Yeah, we should do that.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe
I
I've been
will
saying
do
nice
that.
things this whole time.
We're just sitting here like, nobody's not anything nice. But yes, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts especially really helps us out, and leaving 5 stars. And tell your little friends about us because we're fun. And I think that's it. That's it, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Speaking of ADHD. So any words of wisdom before we head out? Lift with your knees, not your back.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good one.
Speaking of moving.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Especially with the snow child. Mhm.
Yes, and the
Y'all be careful.
shoveling. Oh my goodness gracious. And if it snows one more time, I swear to God. But it will.
I was about to say, choose your next words carefully because it's probably going to snow this afternoon.
Oh God! All right, everyone, stay warm. I have to go take to my bed. I can't. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.